And now for our not game section, we are talking about office hours featuring Toggle.
Yeah. So what are office hours?
So I came to you in my desperation, I turned to a man that I didn't fully understand. That man is Isaiah. So I have been, the word that I would use for it based on a book that you had me read when you had me read the bullet journal book, thrashing. I've been thrashing for years, over the fact that I feel like I do not have enough time to get everything I want to get done, combined with feeling like I am always working. So when you add those things together, what you get is frustration. And it's a little dramatic to say unhappiness, because I am generally like pretty happy with I got all my problems are pretty good problems. But I would say maybe not unhappiness, but dissatisfaction or unsatisfaction. I don't know what the opposite of, unsatisfied. Because it's just like, damn, like I'm doing so much, but like it's not enough,
Not enough.
That's not enough. But like how can that be possible? Like I'm working so much in my mind. Again, am I actually working that much? We're gonna talk about it. But I'm working so much in my mind, but like there's just not enough time for things. And like anyway, I could talk in circles about it, but that's at the core of my problem.
Sure.
And I've been facing this for years, really. Maybe in a way my whole life, let's be real. Because it's like I've always just been someone that does a lot of stuff. I like to keep busy. I like to pursue a lot of goals, blah, 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 blah. And in that, it's tough because I kind of have set my life up where it's like, because I'm as ambitious as I am, I'm never really going to be fully like, it is really hard to like, if I could do everything, I would just add more, because I'd be like, cool, well then that means I can handle more. It's not really an end for my stuff in a lot of ways. So I came to you and you introduced me to office hours.
Yeah. Office hours, obviously not, in the traditional sense are, your professor or teacher or someone would have hours where they are in their room, their office, where you could go to them for extra help if you had questions about like a lesson or assignment or something like that. It's kind of like the dedicated kind of like help time, or a dedicated time where a teacher or professor is available for you to get help. We are co-opting that term and kind of changing it up enough that maybe it's not entirely accurate, but it is our hours that we are in our virtual office.
Yes.
And by that, it's like we work from home, or remotely when we're working with companies and things like that. And it is
both freelance at this point.
Both freelance at this point. It can be a bit of a challenge to not have your entire day just kind of get overloaded with work stuff. Like when you work from home, there's not always a clear work begins and work ends kind of time. And so our office hours is a way for us to kind of try to establish that. We went through our calendars, looked at kind of like what are some of the events on the calendar that already exist, right? Maybe it's like a meeting or a show or some kind of thing that we need to be present for. And is definitely considered working. And then each day kind of gave ourselves, chunks of time, whether it's like, maybe as low as 4 hours, as high as like
12.
10 or 12 in some cases.
I have a 12-hour day. We'll talk about it.
Where, like, hey, like during these hours, I am not at home. I am at work. And it's like a mental.
I'm in my office. These are office hours.
Yeah, exactly.
You are in bed. No, this is my office.
It is a mental exercise to better establish boundaries between the work life and the home life.
Yeah.
While working at home. And I would say so far it's actually been pretty good. As much as I kind of like you, I wish a lot of times at the end of the week that I had more hours to work because I feel like I didn't get enough done, or there are still things that I wanted to do that I just couldn't get to, or it took longer than I expected, or whatever the reason is. But at the same time, I do feel, I don't know, healthier having these office hours where there is a cutoff time, and it's like, you know what? even though I see that I got this email at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, I'm not going to reply to it. I'm not even going to try to look at it, to be honest, because it's like, well, I'll see that when I'm back in the office the next day, the next morning.
When my mind's back.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like
this is severance for the broken. Yeah. Severance, but you couldn't afford the procedure. So you're like, you know what?
Yeah. Yeah. When my innie is back in control, then I'll look at this email.
Every day I wake up and I go, just, this was, this has been revolutionary for me and my life. I will say, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we talk about this, I feel like you have been kind of bad with your office hours in that, like, I've seen Isaiah working pretty late and been like, hey, Isaiah, these your office hours? And he's like, nah. And I'm like, hey. But again, I am of the mind, as you already know, Isaiah, that it's like, I will do whatever you want in terms of that kind of stuff. It's like, if you are not looking for someone to police your office hours, I'm not looking. Hey, I don't like cops anyway. It's all good. Now, if you're like, hey, I could use some help with this, cool, I'll do that. But again, I think that's the difference between like supporting and like berating. It's like, well, do you actually want help on this? Because if you don't, like, maybe you want to kind of just like have your own struggles and deal with that. But also again, like you have not asked me to sort of look at your office hours, and also the office hours thing. Like, I know you kind of did at the same time as like we went over mine. But like you were very involved in the construction of my office hours, while like I never even looked at what your office hours are. I'm like, I don't know, he's doing something. Like, I don't know what's going on. It's been great for me, being banned from work has been incredible because, like you said, it kind of never ends. We work with different time zones, like different things come at different times, and something can easily like. With the way I was talking to some of my friends about the office hours thing and how much it's helped me. And like the thing that it's helped me realize and come to terms with and also start to take control of is that I have been micro working and micro slacking off throughout the week forever. Like, and what I mean by that is like, let's look at, I'm just looking at like this coming Monday, I have my office hours. They're set from 9:30 to 5 p.m. that day. And, we're allowed to eat lunch during this time. And you can, do regular stuff, use about whatever. Like, it's like the stuff that you can, the way you brought it up is like the stuff that would make sense that you could do it in office. Like, oh, you would eat lunch when you're at work, even though it's like, it's 8 hours you're working, but like you need to eat. So like, you can make a coffee or whatever, stuff like that. But it's like.
You would not fold laundry at the office. Yeah. So like that should be a outside of office hours activity. The
only thing I do cheat on for that is I'll move the clothes through the machines because like it just takes all day for me to do it. So it's just like, sure. But even then, actually on Thursdays, a lot of times my office hours start later in the day anyway. So I kind of try to attack the laundry early in the day to try to offset like knowing that like I won't be able to fold anything once the day gets going. But yeah, like the laundry stuff, you wouldn't. Maybe if you get a call from somebody, you make it really brief or something because he's like, I gotta get back to work, like stuff like that, like really the discipline. But also, and even though I know like obviously if you're working at an office job. Especially if you're working at an office job that you don't care about, you probably like, do it. But again, we actually care about like what we're doing. Yeah. If you don't care, mail it in, get your check and leave. I'm not here to tell anyone to, give it their all at their job. I've never said that. I've never been about that. But for us, I think, our work is very much like something that we're really like passionate about and also like self-guided in a way. Like you have things that you're working on that you don't get paid for. Same deal. I have a lot of stuff I work on that I do not directly get a check for, but they all kind of feed into like my career, which is why I'm so invested in it. But to that end, I'm not like opening like social media during like my work hours for the most part. I'm sure there's like a few exceptions where I'll like look at something, but I'm not gonna like scroll a bunch. Like I'm not gonna take these really long like breaks, or I try to like be very mindful when I am taking a break of like, okay, well let me like take 10 minutes or whatever. Again, the way you might do it in an office, but I'm not gonna like watch like a whole movie in the middle of the day, that kind of stuff. So it's very focused. And in that, I feel like that scene from the TV show The Office, where they have that movie day, and Jan is like, Michael, how can the movie make them more productive? And he said, well, they have to work a lot harder to make up for the time that they lost. That's how I feel about not working, where it's like, well, I have all this time where I'm now like banned from working, And that makes me feel like I really have to like attack my work day because these are the only hours I have to work. So if I'm slacking off, like I don't get to just decide I'm dropping, like with that Monday example. I can't say like, oh, I'm just going to chill from 2 to 4 and then I'm going to work at like 7 to 9. Like those are not my office hours.
Yeah.
So now if I need to end the day early or, like I'm not going to die for these hours that I set up anyway, but I'm not going to like get to have like an extension because I was whacked during my office hours. Another really revolutionary thing that you had introduced to me was I have a really long day on Wednesday. That's my 12-hour day. Just because I podcast so early in the day.
Yep.
And like to fit the office hours philosophy, it's like when your day starts, it has to start. It can't just be like, well, I do this podcast in the morning and then like I chill it's like you can't really break up the day. Yeah. It's like it's all one continual day. And that's why the day is so long, just because I have a show so early. And I also have a show that runs into the evening, like my last show like ends at 6:30. Now sometimes some of those shows get canceled or moved or whatever, and then that kind of changes up what the day is. But like because that day is so inherently long, like when you were making my office hours, you're like, and now you're like, that's a 12-hour day. So we have to get those hours back. And I was like, oh, that's never what I was doing. What I had been doing before was like, I have that long day. I have like Monday where I have like kind of a lot of like a couple meetings. So then I like don't get a lot done that day. Like right before the office hours, I'm like, I don't really get a lot done that day. Tuesday, I get some stuff done, but I stream. Wednesday, I have my big show day. And then Thursday was like this big day where I don't have anything on my calendar. Usually, sometimes I get, actually this week I have a little thing on my calendar, but it's rare for me to have stuff on there. And before the office hours, I was like, Isaiah, like, I don't want to add anything to this. This is my only time where I really feel like I have to work. Even though, again, my shows and my podcast, it is me working, but it's just like, it's very specific work with that where I can't do like, it's not as free form, Like that's not going to be my emails. It's not going to be my writing. It's not going to be my gaming. And those are all things I have to also do for work. So I'm like, this is my only like time to work. So in my head, before we do the office hours, I'm like, this needs to be like, literally like I wake up and I work and until like I crash out. Like that's what, and the thing I didn't want to admit is like, while I have that one day that's like 12 hours, again, it's a podcast day, which podcasting is still hard, but just different than like writing. Like I can do 3 shows in a day. I cannot write like 3 long articles a day. And I know some people that only write, they're like, oh, I do like 5 articles a day. But also, I write features on news. Anyway, I'm not here to like compare for the type of writing I do. I'm not going to like, let's use a simple example. I'm not writing 3 reviews in a day. And I think even if you're like a reviewer by trade, you're probably not either. So it's like, it doesn't, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, well, I'm going to have to though write for like 12 hours. Cause it's like, the only time I could write in a way. And that just never would happen. Cause it like can't happen. Cause like the work is just a little too intense. Like it needs good short bursts. It can't like, I can't just knock out, like not all time is equal.
Sure.
Like, it doesn't all feel the same. And I'm like, well, like that's the only time I really have. And this has kind of like helped me see my time more clearly and then use my time more wisely as a result. So the idea of like, it is so much easier to like, for instance, this week, I don't know if I might change it up because I have to double check like my hour count for like what I have planned for this week. But like, was it 12, like 5 hours? It's like basically like 5 hours or whatever that I have on Thursday. It's like, that is probably going to be a lot better than my fake 12-hour day that I had in my mind, before doing this. Cause it's like, okay, I just have to lock in during this time. And when the time hits, I can stop. And it's like, I have not even just permission, but I'm required to stop. Like I have to kind of clock out. And I think that has made me a lot smarter about my time, but also feel less guilt because before what I was feeling was like, oh, I'm just like not getting stuff done. This kind of sucks. I guess I just have to work more. And it's like, you cannot just work more to get more done because you have like a finite amount of energy to work. And even though I knew that conceptually, like this helped me put it in practice where like, I still feel a little salty. Like I'm working on that freaking my best of article. I've been working like on it all month in different spots. And I'm definitely realizing that finding time to write has been really hard for me. So I'm going to definitely work on addressing that like this month. I'm like, how can I really make sure that in these office hours, I'm making times where I can be writing and figuring out what are the steps to writing and how can I be engaging with those like more frequently. So I still have like some like, some elements of those feelings, but I don't feel like, I don't know, like, oh, I just failed in a way, even though it's like, I did technically fail, but it's like, oh, I just have to kind of like figure out how to make it work within my schedule and like when I want to spend my time and like in auditing my time more, because it's like I didn't fail, the week just ended. You know what I mean? And it's like I didn't lose, I just ran out of time.
No, that is a really good way to think of it and look at it, is that you didn't fail, the week just ended.
Yeah.
And I think one of the bigger sort of, no, I'm speaking for you, mental switches that you had when we sat down and went through all this is that, like, yeah, you saw your big 12-hour day as, I think, effectively not work in a schedule sense, because you saw that as you losing time from working, when really that is you working a huge chunk of time. It's not, you don't need to make that up. You don't need to work for 12 hours and then work an additional 12 hours elsewhere because you missed out on working
12 hours.
for 12 hours. Yeah.
And you're like, no, you worked 12 hours. And I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, in a technical sense, but like, you know.
So I think that was like really just honestly the biggest thing. Because again, your week itself is like a fairly standard week. In as far as like, you know, as an adult in society, you work, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all right, well, the 12-hour day is like really the outlier here. Like that's the special thing that, like, if you compare your schedule to the average person, that's going to be the thing that really jumps out. So once we got over that hurdle and figured out other times where we can get that time back and have more time to do, you know, the laundry, the practice of piano, the hobbies, the gaming for fun and not just for work, and like, you know, you found these moments then that you were able to kind of like claw back.
I'd also love to hear, mostly because I think you'd be better explaining it than I am, but your differentiation about gaming for work versus gaming for fun.
Yeah.
Which I have accepted your definition, because I'm like, I think I felt like it made sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's perfect, because I do think you can kind of argue that I'm like kind of always playing for work, but I liked what you
could
came
always
up
make
with.
that argument. Yeah. Yes, and that's the problem.
So go ahead and sound off.
I think it's kind of like the difference between gaming for work and gaming for fun for you is like, is there will you, quote, be in trouble if you don't play it, right? Where it's like, oh, if you were assigned something because you're going to talk about it on a show next week, it's like, okay, anytime you're playing that before that episode, you're playing that for work. You're trying to play enough that you can then talk about it for work. And you could hit a point where it's like, okay, I've played enough that I could talk about this for work, and maybe that isn't finishing the game, but I want to keep playing. Well, now that switches over to you're playing it for fun. And the idea is that you can play games during your office hours if you're playing it for work.
Yeah.
And you cannot play games for work outside of your office hours. It has to be playing games for fun. And so it's a little bit of a like honor system that you have to have within yourself.
With a caveat of like exceptions will arise. You know, like obviously if I don't know,
you guys really are talking about Persona.
Yeah, I really, yeah. I'm assigned Persona 6, and I get the code on Friday, and the show's on like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you know, whatever. It's like probably gonna like, if you really want to make something to say, you're probably gonna be playing on the weekend. Or, you know, I consult as well. Like those are very timelined jobs, obviously. Now, granted, a lot of times I get decent timelines on those. Part of what makes consulting more like a more humane assignment than like I think we normally would a regular reviewer kind of just gets, frankly. Like you just normally have more time, and obviously there's reasons for that. It's not just because they want reviewers to suffer. You know, they have like they can only send it out so early because it's only done so early, and and then embargoes and, you know, all of that. I don't think they do it out of malice, but just generally the timeline is bigger. Like sometimes I get a game for consulting and I have a month to play it, and it's like only 8 hours. So it's like, okay, you can do that with. Now sometimes I get a project for consulting and it's way bigger, and I only get 2 weeks, and it's like, actually I'm playing this every day, all the time. I live with the game.
Yeah,
those are rarer, but they happen. And those are times where it's like, okay, sometimes you do have to like dip outside of that and kind of use a little bit of that weekend. But outside of that, like to give an example, at this point, Lonely Mountain Snow Riders. The name is not great. I'm sorry, guys. You guys made a great game. Not a great name. With the new category this year. Like at this point, that is a for fun game. Even though I will, very likely have it on my best of quarter one list and all that. However, if I were to write about that game, that's not work because it's like now I'm writing and it's like really, or I'm playing the game to take a note on it. That's like, which I have done sometimes. It's like, oh, let me boot up this game to like double check this mechanic or see how to explain this thing or whatever. Yes. And I have accepted your definition.
Yeah.
And taken it and ran with it.
And, you know, neither of us are perfect, right? Like you mentioned, you'll walk
Some
into
of
the
us are
kitchen.
closer, but no, I'm just kidding.
You'll walk into the kitchen and see me still working at the table or something like that. Especially this past week where I'm sort of like onboarding to a new freelance project and things like that. And so like really, you know, I might work this weekend because I have to wait until I get... I'm
glad you said that because I got some stuff I want to work on this weekend too. Let's go!
I have to wait until I'm given access to some things and need to really like coordinate with someone else who
Seven to my toxic
has
web.
to onboard me to some system or something like that. And so like, you know, sometimes there are just, especially when you freelance, just times where scheduling is just, you know, a little out of your control.
Yeah.
Or like if you really, you know, if your goal is to be flexible, then that will eat into other times that you have.
Yeah, the tough thing, which in a non-evil way, which I'm sure some people will think I'm evil, but I'm really not. I promise. I'm a solid person. I do really enjoy. I don't enjoy you being miserable because why would I? That's horrible. But I do enjoy you getting a taste of like some of the things I've dealt with because besides the fact that I think it just gives you a better understanding of like my life, but also it can help. We can like help each other because I've been there, but now you see what it's like to really be there and can understand. I mean, obviously you can understand things from like you look at things. I talk to you. You talk to me. Like it's not like you didn't understand what my life was, but like yeah, that is like part of the struggle of being a freelancer is like. You have to always seem like you're, oh my God, you're like the savior of the company. Like you're so available, you're so great. And you do want to seem that way and you do want to be that way. But you have to secretly like have your own system where it's like they don't know that like I only respond at this time. Or you know what I mean? Like you have to seem like you're like, because that's kind of what you are. You kind of come in as the ringer, you know? You're like the relief pitch. You're here, you know, to sort of fill this gap that they like couldn't fill before. And with that, you know, you it's almost like the like you know in different workers face this at different times like retail workers face this for like the holidays like you work on the holidays because you're where people get their stuff from like you are there to help other people celebrate. You don't get to celebrate, which sucks for sure. Like I'm not saying I agree with that structure, but that is kind of like the position I think a lot of freelancers can find themselves in. Like, you know, you're freelance, you're probably working, you know, especially depending on what your field is, like you might be working when the staff is off because that's when like you're filling in for like that holiday or whatever. And, you know, and different people have that. I mean, you even had that back at your old job for like the Thanksgiving was like a busy season because of Black Friday.
Yeah.
So like you kind of have to, figure out how to like be in your role because like you're not a 9-to-5 worker. So like, and that's what I like about this office hour system because I'm not a 9-to-5 worker. And this structure isn't pretending that I am. Because I think a lot of times when you talk to people about like, the idea of work-life balance and boundaries, they're very like, they lean very much on well, you should work like 9 to 5 because like most people work 9 to 5 and like that's what we determined. But I like that like my schedule, like I have a 12:30 to 5, I have a 7 to 6:30, I have a 11:30 to 7:30. I have stuff that is atypical, but it makes sense for what I'm doing, but it's still like humane and it's figured out how to like it's reconciled with that fact because like the truth is like I stream until 7 like on Tuesdays and Fridays. It's like that doesn't fit in a normal schedule and like okay, we're not going to try to make it a fit. We're just going to have these chunks of time and we're shifting the blocks where it makes sense to have the blocks. And that's what I've really liked about what you've offered because so many other things you're like, well, you should wake up at 5 a.m. and then work at 9. And like if it works for you and it makes sense, like okay, cool, like slay, but like it just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't
like
make sense for me.
The best thing that I could do is like the earliest thing I want to do is I eventually want us to get to the gym at 7 a.m. Because also that's very in line with like my Wednesday day starts at 7 a.m. So it's like if I can get into the habit of starting a day at 7 a.m. that would just be nice and cohesive. I haven't really done that. I don't know if I really do that, but you know, like we have our gym times in there too, and figuring out like when to put that in, and also just like I like not doing I felt like I was working and doing chores all the time, and by the time the days would end, I'd look back at my day and I'm like, I didn't do anything that was like leisure. And now I feel like I'm doing so much leisure.
Yeah, I'm
watching shows. I'm watching shows. I'm watching movies. I'm playing games. And it's been, again, it's not funny in the like, haha, you suffer, I'm not kind of sense. But it's been funny like hearing from you having those moments of like, I didn't have fun today. And I'm like, that's crazy because like we had the same day and I felt like I had so much fun because I used to not have any like, and again, I still was enjoying my life, but I just was not doing much that was leisure because it's like, well, by the time you don't want to work and if you want to go to sleep, which I think it's a struggle a lot of people face, you know, even if you're like a 9-to-5 worker, if you have a commute and, you know, if you have kids, like different, you might not have what I have, but you probably have something that's like getting in the way of you feeling like
100%.
You have like that me time or whatever. But now it's like, I'm listening to GNX, I'm playing Lonely Mountains for fun. Like, I'm just like, I feel like I'm very excited to be in the era that I'm in, which I had to be forced into because I was like, well, how can I make it work when I have all this other stuff going on?
And this is also nothing about like the weekend flexibility that I feel we have more strongly now too, where it's like, okay, because we are more strict about our weekdays, it's like, all right, well, once the weekend hits, it feels way more like a weekend. Like I used to dread Sundays. We had the Sunday scaries because like sometimes it wasn't until Sunday, like Sunday night, Sunday evening, that I'm like, all right, finally feel like it's time to relax, or I got some, you know, moments to myself, or like, oh, we can sit down, we can chill, we can hang out, we can go out, go on a date or do whatever. And it's like, man, Monday's tomorrow, like everything starts back up. Now it feels much more like, okay, by Friday night, I'm feeling like, oh, I'm going into the weekend.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, we record this podcast on the weekend, so like you can argue, oh yeah, there's like work stuff you do there.
Yeah.
But like it still just doesn't, it hits different now.
Yeah.
In just having these office hours. So yeah.